All right, District Court is now in session. We are here for the State of San Andreas versus Haaris Ali, case number 21-17763. Are witnesses on both sides present? State.
Your Honor, let's see here. Danny Murphy's on his way to the courtroom.
All right, are your other witnesses present?
Just one of the other key witnesses.
All right. And the defense did have no witnesses admitted, correct?
That's correct, Your Honor.
All right. All right. We're going to proceed to... The state, please read out the charges against Mr. Ali today.
Yes, Your Honor. Bear with me one moment. Okay, Your Honor. The charges today is PC 2222, manslaughter.
All right. And Mr. Ali, how do you plead to one charge of manslaughter?
Your Honor, Mr. Ali pleads not guilty to all counts as presented.
All right. That is Mr. Ali standing next to Teddy, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, good. All right. We'll now proceed to opening statements. Prosecution, go ahead.
Yes, Your Honor. Bear with me one moment. All right. Sorry, Your Honor. September 28th, 2021. Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the court, this date in this trial is a significant date because an unfortunate event happened this day. The unfortunate result ended the life of one lady, Ms. Victoria Emeralds. The defendant here today is the one who unfortunately ended her life. The circumstances of which are very unfortunate. Was it self-defense? Or was it a sense of excessive force that resulted in the unnecessary death of a woman? In this trial today, will be proven today with the motives and means of which the events that occurred resulted in the death of this young woman by the hands of the defendant, whether it was on purpose or by accident. That is all, Your Honor.
Thank you, prosecution. The defense may proceed with their opening statement.
Counsel, may it please the court? You see a tragedy as enormous as this, and it makes you furious. You want someone to pay. It's only human. But Haaris Ali is innocent. And I want to say that again so there's no misunderstanding. Haaris Ali is wholly and completely innocent. When you understand what really happened that day, you will see this case for what it is, a rush to judgment. The interview, for example, the interview that the prosecution will talk about during the trial. You're going to hear about how Victoria Emeralds was striking Mr. Ali's vehicle. You're going to hear today how Victoria Emeralds striked Haaris Ali. You are going to hear how Haaris Ali was defending himself. After you've heard all the evidence, we will ask that you return a verdict of not guilty for the defendant, Haaris Ali. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. All right. We'll now proceed to witnesses. However, before we go there, I just want to say a quick thing. So today, let's try to keep on track with questions. Let's not try to, go around in places we don't need to. Let's stick to the case, because there is a case after this, and if need be, we will continue it to another. We can continue this to a different day if it goes on past 2 hours. However, if it needs to, that's fine, but let's keep on track. Alrighty. The state may call their first witness.
Yes, Your Honor. The state would like to call Danny Murphy.
I don't know where I'm supposed to go.
Come over here, sir. God, boy. I want to stand right here for me, sir. Raise your left hand. You swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth under penalty of perjury, so help you God.
I do.
All right, go ahead and have a seat right there for me.
Just stay standing so people can see you, Mr. Murphy.
Sounds good.
Just the dynamics of this court.
Yeah, don't sit down, Mr. Murphy.
Hello there, Mr. Murphy.
Hello.
How are you doing today?
I'm pretty good. How about yourself?
Doing good. Doing good. Taking a look here. Who took the pictures in Exhibit A?
Exhibit A. Which
Yes.
Exhibit A would be?
Defendant's pockets.
That would be Officer Kenny Moon, I believe. Now Senior Officer Kenny Moon.
Okay. All right. In Exhibit B, if you could look at that. Let's see here. Which calls did you respond to?
There was originally a call through dispatch for an ambulance needed, I believe. And then soon after that, there was a shots fired on the corner of Spanish and I think it was Power at the time. And we responded to that to 2 individuals standing over the body of Miss Emeralds.
Okay. Can you identify one of those individuals standing over the body today?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Would you be able to point him out?
It's the man in the black suit with the black hair and the black tie sitting on the other side of the room there, across from us.
Can you point him out?
Right there.
Okay. All right then. Who attempted to revive Miss Emerald?
That would be Officer Kenny Moon.
Did EMS arrive to assist with resuscitation?
They arrived, but they were very busy, I believe, with other calls at the time. There was only EMS. There was only one EMS on duty at the time. I think it was Lunetta. I can't remember her last name, but she was on duty and she tried to get there as soon as she could. But after 6 rounds of compressions and rescue breaths, she didn't make it.
Okay. Alrighty. Let's see here. Okay. Let's see. Make sure I'm getting this right. Who said they shot the weapon?
Who said they shot the weapon? It would be the defendant.
Keep in mind
Haaris Ali.
this. Keep in mind for the courts, this is the pistol that is found in Exhibits A and E1. Noted specifically with the serial number in E1. Okay. Let's see here. Making sure here. Alrighty. Let's see here. Did the defendant explain the situation to you? The situation question on September 28th,
He did
2021?
as best he could. He was very distraught at the time, very apologetic for what had happened, saying that he didn't mean for it to happen. Unfortunately, we weren't on scene to actually see exactly what had went down at the time, but after gathering all of the evidence we could, we found out that it was him indeed who did shoot Miss Emeralds, and then ended up killing her.
Okay. All right. And again, we can reference exhibits E2, E3A, B, and exhibits E4 for confirmation of that firearm being used. All right. Let's see here. In exhibit F1 for the fingerprint scan, who performed the fingerprint scan?
That would be Officer Kenny Moon.
Okay. Alrighty then. Let's see here. Did the defendant say why he shot Ms. Emeralds?
He claimed it was in self-defense.
Okay. Now, in your professional opinion, is it normal to pull out a gun when someone tries to punch you or assault you, I should say?
Personally, that is not what I would do as Nelio.
Okay. Did the victim have any weapons on her?
I personally did not do any of the searching of her pockets at the time, so I can't really speak on that. That would be Officer Kenny Moon or whoever did the DOA, which I think was
Okay.
Arnhem and Officer Moon.
Okay. But visibly on the ground, were there any weapons?
No, there was no weapons on the ground.
Okay. And for clarification, actually, yeah, that's mine. Alrighty. Let's see here. All right, let me look here. Who charged the defendant with the initial charge of second degree?
That would be Detective Frank Landmark.
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right. The defense may proceed to cross.
Hello there. Can you state your name again for me?
My name? Danny Murphy.
Nice to meet you, Officer Murphy. Now, previously in your testimony, you stated how you received a 911 call. Several, in fact. Is that right?
That's correct.
Who placed those 911 calls?
I'm not exactly sure who placed them. It might have been a local.
Okay.
It could have been the one who was shot before she was unconscious, but I'm not exactly sure.
Okay, so just to confirm, you don't know who placed those 911 calls?
No.
Okay, so could have been anyone.
Who could have been?
Okay. So you previously stated in your testimony that you arrived on scene, you saw two individuals on the scene of the 911 call. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Can you name both of those individuals?
Harrison Ali, and I think the other one was it wasn't Tommy McKinstry. It was another one of the McKinstries. Harrison McKinstry, I believe.
Okay, so you're saying it was Harrison McKinstry and then the defendant?
Yep.
Okay, and do you know who called, or let me rephrase this, did one of those two gentlemen call 911?
We did not get any of that information from them. They were both very distraught.
Okay. Is Mr. McKinstry in this courtroom today? Do you see him?
Not that I can see.
Okay. And Mr. McKinstry, he was on scene right above, you said the body, as you put it. Is that right?
Yes, we did our questioning in the cells of MRPD and found that he was not a part of it.
Okay, so you detained Mr. McKinstry.
Yes, we did.
Okay, what did you ask?
Basically, we wanted to get the entire story from both individuals. I had asked him what he was doing in that area at the time. He had just previously purchased a new weapon from Ammunition.
So it was, you stated Mr. McKinstry was also armed. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And then did you end up releasing Mr. McKinstry?
After we GSR'd both of them and did the forensics on
I'm sorry,
both weapons.
that wasn't the question, sir. You end up releasing Mr. McKinstry.
Yes.
Why was that?
Because GSR came back positive that the forensics for the weapon that Mr. McKinstry had did not match the weapon that was used in the assault of Miss Emerald.
Okay. Did you question Mr. McKinstry?
Yes.
Okay. What did that questioning consist of?
What I had stated before, what he was doing on scene, what happened, what he had seen, what he had heard.
Okay. Did Mr. McKinstry reveal to you as to what role in this situation he was?
Yes, he was down the street at the Ammunition. He had heard gunshots and he ran over to the body, in which he saw Mr. Ali standing over the body.
Okay, so Mr. McKinstry, he didn't see any crime take place, is that right?
No.
Okay. And isn't it true that you also didn't see a crime take place that night?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, you arrived later on, that's right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, when you arrived on scene, did you end up securing the scene? Perimeters up, don't let people stay away?
Yes, we were the only, me and my cadet at the time, Officer Kenneman, were the only ones who were able to arrive on scene, but we made sure that we had everybody who was there detained and placed into the vehicle so we could get them down to MRPD for processing, and we made sure that nobody else was coming.
Now, did you... I'd imagine that you analyzed and processed the scene, collected evidence, that sort of thing?
Yes, we did.
And what did you find?
Bullet casings matching the gun that was on Harrison Ali's person, blood from Miss Emerald's herself, and the body of Miss Emerald's herself.
Okay. Now, at the time that you arrived on scene, was Miss Emerald still alive?
She was still alive, but her pulse was very weak.
Okay. Did she say anything to you?
She was not conscious.
Okay. Did you witness Mr. Ali's vehicle on the scene?
I do not believe so.
Okay. You didn't see his vehicle anywhere?
Not one that he claimed to be his. We didn't see anybody get in or out of any of the vehicles that were on scene, so we had to impound them. And nobody claimed any of the vehicles that were on scene.
Okay.
They said they weren't theirs.
All right. Now, you stated as well that you questioned, did you say you questioned Mr. Ali or Mr. McKinstry?
I personally questioned Mr. McKinstry.
Okay. Did you ask any questions of Mr. Ali while you were still on the scene?
I asked him what happened, but he just kept repeating, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do it," something along those lines.
Did you
As I
detain
stated,
Mr. Ali at that point?
I did.
Scene?
Yes.
Now, isn't it true that Mr. Ali was only read his Miranda rights when he was interrogated in the cells of, I believe, MRPD?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. But you still asked Mr. Ali questions on the scene, is that right?
I asked him because of the fact that he was rambling, but yes.
So you detained Mr. Ali, you were asking him questions material to the case that you were investigating, is that right?
None of those were used in the statement provided.
Again, if you could answer any yes or no.
No.
You did not ask him questions that were material to the case.
No, I did. I'm sorry. I misunderstood.
Okay, that's all right. All right, and you stated previously that the 911 calls that were put in, no one specifically named themselves.
Nobody named themselves. That is correct.
You didn't investigate into who may have placed those calls?
It was a very stressful situation. We were trying to get everybody away from the situation and properly dealt with before more came of the situation. So we didn't really have time. There was nobody else around.
Okay. So you couldn't state for this court whether or not it was Mr. Ali that placed those calls. Is that right?
No, I could not say for certain.
Okay. Is it fair to assume that you didn't fully investigate this case?
I wouldn't say that.
All right, I believe Mr. Hunt may have some more questions.
Good afternoon. Is it Detective Murphy?
Nope. Senior officer.
Senior officer. Apologies. I'd like to ask you a couple questions about the incident itself.
Okay.
During the direct examination, you were asked a couple questions by Mr. Blackstone. He asked you questions along the lines of, you answered questions along the lines of, you wouldn't shoot if you were in that position yourself, right?
Can you repeat the question, sir? I'm sorry.
Sure. So when Mr. Blackstone was asking you a couple questions, he asked you, in your professional opinion, do you believe that this use of force was, and then he said something else, and then you said you personally would not use that type of force, right?
No, I would not.
So I'd like to talk about that a little bit and just talk about the circumstances surrounding the incident itself.
Okay.
So let's talk initially. You'd agree, at least from speaking with Mr. Ali, that he stated to law enforcement that his vehicle was striked, right?
Yes.
You'd agree at that point an incident had unfolded, and later Miss Emeralds attacked Mr. Ali, right?
Yes.
Right. And then
From what we were told, yes.
Sure. And then after Miss Emeralds attacked Mr. Ali, that's when he fired the shot, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you were asked a couple questions on direct examination. And just for clarity for the court, you'd agree, as you are a law enforcement officer, that there doesn't necessarily need to be another gun pulled on you for you to shoot your firearm, right?
That is a fair thing to say, yes.
You'd agree that you need to have a reasonable fear that your life is in danger, right?
Yes.
Right. You'd also agree that if there was another circumstance or if somebody else's life was in danger, or if there was a felony occurring, right?
Yes.
Right. You'd agree in this case, Mr. Ali had a gun pulled at Miss Emeralds, right?
Yes.
He had that gun lowered. And while Mr. Ali had that gun lowered, that's when Miss Emeralds striked the defendant, right?
I wasn't there. I wouldn't be able to tell you.
Sure, but that's what you were told, right?
That is what I was told.
Objection,
so
Your Honor.
far-
That's hearsay. He can't speak on behalf of the defendant.
Your Honor, hearsay would imply that Mr. Ali was told something and then he passed it down essentially along the chain. This is something that Mr. Ali himself directly stated to the officer, therefore it wouldn't be hearsay.
Your Honor, it's for the officer then to pass it along. That's the third party. The officer is the third party.
Your Honor, I'm welcome to respond if you'd like.
All right, just repeat the question for me one more time. Just don't answer it. Just repeat what the question was.
I don't recall the question, Your Honor. I don't have it written down either.
Well, if you don't remember the question,
I can move on.
yeah, just move on because I didn't quite catch exactly what you said. So just keep going, and then if you happen to come upon it again, the objection again, we'll sort it out. All right, so go ahead.
Sure. Okay, so what were you saying before? Can you state that one more time?
Me?
Yeah.
What I was saying to your last question was I didn't have that information as I was not on scene.
Right. But you'd agree, ultimately, that everything inside of this case, you're relying solely
Your
on
Honor, I'd like
Mr.
to object
Ali's...
with the line of questioning, the type of you agree. That's a little more than leading.
Your Honor,
That's a little more out of his bounds, Your Honor. Though he's
it's-
allowed to lead, in a sense, that's a little too much leading to force somebody to agree to something.
Oh, Your Honor, if he doesn't disagree, he can simply say, I don't agree, or no, that's not correct. You'd agree is commonly used.
Your Honor, it should be yes or no questions, not do you would agree, Your Honor.
I'm going to overrule this objection. I find it's within the bounds of leading, but as it's in cross, that's acceptable. So continue, Mr. Hunt.
Sure. Right. So I'm going to ask the question just one more time. So ultimately, you'd agree that all the information that you've relied on with regard to this case is solely from testimony of Mr. Ali and Mr. McKinstry, right?
Yes.
Because you weren't at the scene. You don't know what happened.
I was at the scene after it had already happened, and I collected the evidence that I needed to make a case.
Right. But again, everything that we've gone over in this trial, you're just stating what Mr. Ali told you, essentially, right?
And the evidence that was gathered from the scene, yes.
Sure. So let's talk about the gun. So just to go back a little bit, you'd agree that Mr. Ali had his gun lowered, Miss Emerald's striked him, and then he shot the gun, right?
I would not agree because I wasn't there.
Okay, but that's what you were told, right?
Yes.
Right. And ultimately, let me essentially just ask you a hypothetical here. So you're a law enforcement officer.
Yep.
Let's just say during your day-to-day duties, you encounter somebody. You still following me?
Yep.
Okay. When you encounter that somebody, you guys get into an argument. They start hitting your car, as an example. Okay. After they hit your car, you get out of your car, you confront them, you have a verbal altercation. At this point, you have your gun pulled or your sidearm, and it's pointing directly towards the floor. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
That person now strikes you. You'd agree that there's a couple elements you need to take into consideration, right? One of them being that if they strike you and you, for example, fall to the floor, they can take your firearm from you, right?
I guess.
Right. And that's a pretty deadly weapon.
Well, yeah, but like I said as well, it's not the type of force that I would use to somebody smacking my car.
Right. Sure. But again, let's say that you had the firearm
Your Honor,
pulled.
I'd like to object to this questioning and have it all stricken from the record, for the fact is this is all hypothetical, and neither at any point in time did the defense counsel ask for his professional opinion.
Your Honor, during the prosecutor's direct examination, he offered expert testimony when he explicitly stated, in your expert opinion as a police officer, and then he asked a question which offered expert testimony, which is now why I'm asking a hypothetical.
Your Honor, he still would have to say in his expert opinion for the court's clarification.
I disagree, but I'll let Your Honor roll.
I'm gonna overrule this objection. You can continue.
Okay, so let's go back to where we were.
Okay.
So again, let's say as an example, you had your weapon pulled, it was pointed at the floor, and this person strikes you. What are some of the factors that you take into consideration now?
And you're saying if I had my gun pulled?
Yeah.
First action would be to hit them with the butt of the gun.
No, that's not what I'm asking. I'm saying what factors you take into consideration. For example, like The fact that they can take your gun, the fact that you have a duty belt on that has a taser, pepper spray. Well, what kind of those factors do you take into consideration?
First and foremost, you should always be checking hands, seeing what is in their hand. And then, obviously somebody can, if they were to knock you out, take things off of your person. But, our SOPs definitely say that we should always be matching force.
Right. And you'd agree that civilians don't have a standard operating procedure, right?
Yes, I would agree with that.
Right. And ultimately, sorry about that. And ultimately, as a law enforcement officer, you don't let something happen to you and then take action, right? You stop something before it can happen.
Yes.
Right. So you wouldn't let this person punch you to the floor, then take your gun, then shoot you. You'd stop them far before they can do that, right? You wouldn't let them punch you, right? You wouldn't let them go the step further.
It depends on the situation entirely. You never know when somebody's going to wind up and punch you.
Right. That's what I'm saying. I'm saying that when someone does, because we're talking about a hypothetical here, when they do punch you, you're not going to let them just continuously punch you, right? You're going to take action to stop so they can't, for example, take your firearm, right?
Yes.
Okay. If I could have one moment, Your Honor.
All right, now, Officer Murphy, previously you were testifying as to how you would act as an officer in this sort of situation. Now, do you believe, or back up, have you reviewed all of the evidence in this case?
Personally, I haven't seen all of it, no.
Okay. Do you believe that Mr. Ali broke the law?
Yes.
Okay. How can you prove, without actually being on the scene, that the actions that Mr. Ali took against Ms. Emeralds rose to the level of a manslaughter charge?
The evidence that we gathered on scene. The evidence that I didn't personally see was the interrogation that happened within the interrogation room. So I didn't see. He did admit to the crime under Miranda. And we also gathered plenty of evidence off the scene.
Sorry, I'd just like to back up. You previously stated in your testimony that you were not there at his interrogation, correct?
Yes, but he was also Mirandized in the cells before the interrogation.
My question, sir. You don't need to continue on. Now, you would agree that overall, in a case where either an officer or a civilian is protecting themselves, it can be an ever-evolving circumstance.
Yes.
Like an 11. Okay. You would agree. And again, you don't have any evidence to show that the actions that Mr. Ali took were in any way criminal.
Can you repeat that question?
Sure, I can back up if you'd like. Now, you weren't there on the scene, so you would not have seen the actions that Mr. Ali took. Is that right?
I didn't see what happened, but I was there after the fact.
Okay. Now, would you agree that situations that can be dangerous for either officers or civilians are ever evolving, and therefore those civilians or officers they make split-second decisions?
Yes.
Okay. Now, with all of that in mind, you were not actually on the scene to witness what actions Mr. Ali took and whether or not they were the correct ones for that set of circumstances.
Yes.
Okay. No further questions, Your Honor. Unless Mr. Roberts may have said.
All right. Would the prosecution like to redirect?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Proceed.
Now then, Senior Officer Murphy.
Yep.
Did the defendant tell you that the victim struck him? Yeah.
I do believe he did, yes.
do you know for sure?
He had said something about it, but like I said, he wasn't Mirandized at the time, so I cannot personally say.
Okay. No further questions, Your Honor.
All right. Mr. Murphy may step down. Thank you. You may proceed to your next witness, Mr. Blackstone.
Yes, Your Honor. I'd like to call the stand Detective Frank Landmark.
There you go, buddy.
Alrighty, Mr. Landmark. Go and raise your left hand for me, sir. Do you swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth under penalty of perjury, so help you the Queen?
I do.
Alrighty, he's been sworn in.
Well, back up. Do it the right way.
What'd I do wrong?
You know what you did wrong.
Do you swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth under penalty of perjury, so help you God
I do.
and the Queen? Sword it.
Hello there, Detective Landmark. How are you doing today?
I'm good, Blackstone. How are you?
Doing good. For clarification for the court, would you state your full name?
Frank Landmark.
Okay. Now, in regards to the situation in question on September 28, 2021, when did you become part of the scene?
At Mission Road Precinct when I was handed off the suspect in custody by officers Murphy and Moon.
Okay. All right. And then referencing exhibits A and E1, is that the firearm that was tested?
E1, yeah, that was the firearm tested, yeah, the combat pistol in the possession of Haaris Ali, yeah.
Alrighty. Who performed the test?
I did.
Okay. How much experience do you have in testing firearms? Oh, I should say, let me clarify for the court there. Let me rephrase that question. How much, okay. How well trained are you in the testing of casings from firearms?
Trained to the degree that it requires it to be correct.
Okay. Do all detectives have to undergo training for shell casing training? Forensics, my point.
All detectives in Major Crimes Division and CID do, yeah.
Okay. All right, then let's see here. Who performed the fingerprint scan on the defendant?
As far as I'm aware, it would have been Officer Moon.
Okay. Just looking through some things here.
Okay.
All right. Did the defendant tell you he shot Victoria Emeralds?
Yes.
Sorry, Your Honor, can we have a sidebar?
You may.
All right, thank you.
Just both sides walk over here a bit, because otherwise it goes across the whole room. Should. All right.
All right, Your Honor. Essentially, we're getting, I've talked to our client that Overall, he requested an attorney for this interrogation. That request was going to be fulfilled, but there was not an attorney available. And then the officer currently on the stand didn't ask whether Mr. Ali waived his right to an attorney, but continued asking questions, essentially violating his right to an attorney when he was still maintaining that right. Overall, we'd ask that this testimony in its entirety, if it has to do with the interrogation, be struck from the record.
Mr. Blackstone.
Your Honor, it's up to the defendant to continue to answer his questions if he's being interrogated while he's waiting for an attorney.
Not if he
Doesn't
hasn't.
have to answer him.
Your Honor, overall, when the
I
request
think
for
they
an
call that
attorney is made,
spontaneous utterance.
well, Your Honor, a
The detective
spontaneous
does not have the right
utterance.
to waive our client's right to an attorney. You understand that, correct?
No arguing.
And if I may, Your Honor.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, thank you. Overall, a spontaneous utterance would essentially be before where Mr. Ali's rights were read. This essentially was after his rights were read, Mr. Ali requested an attorney. At that point, all questioning has to stop until that attorney arrives or until the defendant waives the right to an attorney. In this case, Mr. Ali, he didn't waive his right to an attorney. Detective Landmark continued questioning him regardless of asking him whether he maintained his right or wanted to wait for an attorney. That's the main issue, that the detective didn't ask whether he waived his right to an attorney and just continued to ask questions regardless.
All right. So, Mr. Blackstone, you have no more further rebuttal?
Well, for the fact is that, it's up to the defense to prove that. Because
All
it's
right.
coming from the word of the defendant as of now. Right when we're in the middle of court. Seems very convenient.
I think there's an easier way to resolve that. I mean, there's no point in continuing the questioning with that question outstanding. I mean, you could ask him. He's right behind all there.
All right. I'm going to converse with Judge York and come to a decision about the motion. But before I do that, why was this not brought in pre-trials?
Of course, Your Honor. I mean, overall, it wouldn't have been an issue since we believe that Detective Landmark would essentially have, had more to testify to as other than just its interrogation. I think overall, we mainly were just conversing with Mr. Ali during the testimony, and that's when it came up.
Keep in mind, Your Honor, this was a little over 2 weeks later.
I mean, at the end of the day, Your Honor, it is, of course, on the officer that is partaking in the question. Sure that the defendant's rights were upheld, not necessarily for us to prove that they weren't upheld necessarily.
All right. I'm going to speak with Judge York in the chambers, and we'll come out and announce the motion.
Thank you.
Of course, Your Honor.
Mm-hmm. All right.
I hope I did that right.
Is the prosecution present? Oh, there he is. All right.
Yeah, over here, Your Honor. I'm sorry. I was trying to fix my life, Veda.
That's fine. All right. So, before I rule on this motion, I need a piece of knowledge. So, Mr. Blackstone, it's not mentioned anywhere, did the defendant ask for an attorney and then was not granted one continued? Mr. Blackstone, to your knowledge?
Not to my knowledge, sir, Your Honor. That's why we're going to be questioning the detective.
So, do you know that for a fact, or do you just not know from currently?
I do not know currently, Your Honor.
All right. Mr. Landmark, may I ask you one question? Is this a matter of a motion? Only
ahead.
this? So, Mr. Lamb, under oath and all that, did Mr. Ali ask for an attorney and then was not able to be given one because none was present, and then question continued?
So, Mr. Ali, when Miranda'd, asked if he required legal counsel. He was initially shaky between yes or no, but however, he finally said yes. I then stopped my line of questioning, stepped out of the room, and for around 10 minutes, 15 minutes, attempted to reach a member of public defenders or a lawyer by life invader, phone, text, and bleater. After that period had ended, I re-entered the room, approached Mr. Ali, informed him of obviously that there was none available, that we won't be none available at the time, and then basically we carried on after I asked him if he was, wanted to carry on. Obviously, with the unavailability of any PDO or anything like that, would he like to carry on? And initially, shakily was a yes.
All right. Me and Judge George could go in chambers again, and then we'll come out with the verdict for the motion, with the motion, not the entire case house.
Get back up there, Teddy.
All right. With the motion, in regards to the testimony with the interview, with the defendant not having any legal counsel even when he requested it due to the city none being available, I will be accepting the motion that was put forth. So the state may proceed with their questioning, minus in regards to the interview. And you may go ahead, State. Mr. Blackstone.
Yes, Your Honor. All right then. I'll review some of this information here, Your Honor.
It's fine.
Okay. In your professional opinion there, Detective Landmark, why was second-degree murder charged?
I'd have to get the description up real quick on my phone on the criminal code, and then I'll answer your question if that's okay.
Okay.
Okay, so initially I charged Haaris Ali with second-degree felony murder because when stated to me of his actions of the day, they met the actions befitting the definition of a second-degree felony murder of directly or indirectly killing someone without premeditated intent.
Okay. Alrighty then. If I take a look here, Your Honor. Okay, let's see here. Is that you in Exhibit F2?
Correct.
Is that the defendant's driver's license?
Correct.
Was that found on the defendant's person?
Yes.
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, the defense may proceed to cross.
Gunner, may we have a brief moment?
Yes, just make it brief because we are We don't want to encroach on the next court case's time.
Your Honor, we have no questions for this witness.
Or would the defense like to redirect? Sorry, not defense, state.
No, Your Honor.
All
No
right.
further questions. At this point here, no,
Mr.
go ahead then, Mr. Hall.
Yes. Your Honor, the defense would like to file a motion of a directed verdict. If you'd like, I can elaborate on the motion.
Go ahead.
Of course, Your Honor. Now, this defense overall in a directed verdict motion. Overall, Your Honor would look at this case in the light most favorable towards the state. Now, it is the opinion of the defense that there has not been any evidence submitted that would amount any reasonable judge or jury to convict the defendant as it currently stands. That's why would we enter a motion for a directed verdict.
All right. Mr. Blackstone.
Your Honor, it would be most courteous and orthodox for us to allow our closing statements, as I was about to say, that prosecution rests.
All right. For the record, is the defense asking for a summary judgment or?
Your Honor, the defense is asking for a directed verdict. We're asking for the court to enter a judgment of innocence for the defendant. Overall, when analyzing this case and the evidence as a whole, there is not a sufficient basis for this trial. Even when we're looking at this case, the light that is most favorable for the state, looking at it, what would be best for their evidence, and looking at it in the best, most possible light for the prosecutors. Overall, there is not enough evidence by any reasonable judge or jury to convict Mr. Ali. And because there is not enough evidence, there's not been enough testimony to convict Mr. Ali, we would ask the court, let's face, to dismiss this case and enter a judgment of innocence for Mr. Ali.
All right. Myself and Judge York will go to chambers and have a quick discussion, and then if you need to speak up, Mr. Roberts, but sure, I can't hear you quite well.
One additional thing. That would be based on the fact that the entirety of this case was put on the statement submitted by Mr. Frank Lamarck, which has now been scratched.
Your Honor, may I rebut to this request for a direct verdict?
Go ahead.
Your Honor, there is sufficient evidence with what's going on here. This is why we're wanting to move towards a closing. It is most unusual to have to, in a sense, that the defense counsel is wanting to essentially force you to come to a quick verdict without a closing statement, which would impact this. There is sufficient evidence here, Your Honor. For the fact is, we have a gun, we have shell casings, we also have a dead on arrival report. How are these things not correlated? For the fact is that the same gun that was used to kill a woman was found at the scene, was found on the person. The casings that were used against this person were found at the scene and matched as by the expertise of the Major Crimes Division. The fact is, Your Honor, it's most unusual that they're trying to force you to have to come to a decision on what's in on the verdict.
All right. Thank you for the rebuttal. Me and Judge York will discuss and make a decision on the verdict motion. If both sides can get back to their places, please. All right. So, on the motion for directed verdict, we are going to deny the motion and continue to closing statements. The prosecution may proceed with their closing statement unless, actually, no, everyone already did their
The
questioning
defense
for
may present
them.
a witness. We just need a
Yes.
brief moment.
You-
Oh, my
Your Honor.
apologies. Did you want to?
Yeah, oh, my
hold on.
apologies. Yep.
So, the defense want to present a witness? I didn't.
Potentially, we just need a brief moment to confer.
All right, that's fine. And
Do
the
you have
defense,
a
the state have
5-minute
something?
recess, Your Honor?
Your Honor, may I also object to this that this wasn't brought up in discovery of witnesses?
We're talking
I
about
do
the
believe
defendant,
that
Your Honor. Overall,
the defendant
the-
is always allowed to take the stand.
Yeah, all right.
Okay, well, it wasn't
I
specified.
understand. All right, you can have a short, very short recess to speak, but
Aye.
again, please be brief. We
All right, let's outside.
don't have all that much time.
Hightail, hightail.
Just speak in front of us. Damn, we got more lawyers.
All right. So, would the defense like to call any witnesses, or their defendant to the stand, or?
No, Your Honor. The defense reps.
All right, and the prosecution also has no more witnesses, correct?
That is correct, Your Honor.
All right, we'll proceed to closing statements now. No more recesses, because we are going to be short on time if we keep going. So we will proceed to closings. The state may proceed first.
Yes, Your Honor. May I approach the bench?
Yep, go ahead.
All right. Your Honors, and people of the court, today, given with the evidence, the circumstances, the testimonies of both witnesses, it is sad and tragic the loss of Miss Victoria Emeralds. Though for the situation was through the cross-examination, or the redirect, I should say, of Danny Murphy, it wasn't determined whether or not that the defendant struck first, or that the victim struck first, but there was an attempt. Because they did say that the car was being beaten. Regardless of the situation here, we also must take into consideration every person is different. Be you a young gentleman, all the way to an experienced law officer, or even to myself as an elderly gentleman. Everyone handles emergencies and situations differently. Given the circumstances, given by the law, because again, manslaughter. What is manslaughter? Manslaughter is what is referred to as third-degree murder, but we just call it manslaughter. As by the definition of the law, unintentionally causing the death of a person without malice aforethought results when death occurs from an improper use of reasonable care or skill, reckless or negligent, in the commission of a lawful act, or when death occurs while the commission of a lawful act not amounting to a felony. Given with the evidence, we have shell casings that were found at the scene. Those shell casings were gathered and they were tested by Detective Landmark. Landmark tested the same weapon, Exhibits A and Exhibit E1. Same weapon, test fired, taken forensics, and were found to be a match. It was never noted by defense whether or not, he fired the gun, but given through the testimony, all leads point to the defendant fired the gun. The gun is his. The gun was found on his person. The shell casings were found on the ground. And we have a dead on arrival report. One Miss Victoria Emeralds. It is tragic for the circumstances that it resulted in this, even though the defense is going to try to lead with this argument that it was self-defense. But what reasonable person, regardless of the circumstances, a person who was visibly unarmed would then pull a gun on that unarmed person and decide to pull the trigger, all because they were hitting their truck. That's a bit excessive. And given with the understanding of what the law states, that constitutes as manslaughter. Nothing stopped the defendant from staying in his truck and calling 911. Nothing stopped the defendant from driving away and then calling 911. Nothing stopped the defendant from using his own bare hands to defend himself. No, he chose to pull a gun and shoot a woman. And shoot her dead in the street, as shown in the exhibit. Your Honors, given with that evidence, with the unsurmounting evidence, given though it's only by word of mouth, whether or not who hit first or who shot, given with the circumstances and what was found on the defendant, it is proven without a doubt somebody shot and somebody died. And that somebody who shot was the defendant, and the one who died was Victoria Emeralds, to the hands of the defendant. Whether it was defense, self-defense, it doesn't matter. As what is given by the definition of manslaughter, it is still manslaughter. And if it is found that he's not guilty, God help us all. That is all.
Defense may proceed with their closing.
Yes. Permission to move out?
Go ahead.
As stated in the opening statement today, September 28, 2021 was an eventful day, an unfortunate day, and as stated many, many times, a sad day. Sad for multiple reasons. The lady by the name of Miss Victoria Emeralds lost her life that day. But a man by the name of Haaris Ali, that day, at 19 years old, was forced to defend himself and do something that he has never done, ever. Exhibits I-1 through 3 will show that my client is not somebody who is trained, familiar, or even has used firearms in the past. My client is a nice young kid trying to make his way in this world. And he was forced to make a decision. And that decision was his life versus the life of somebody who is banging, beating his car, and swinging at him. He was forced to make that decision and chose his life in self-defense. My client that day, as Senior Officer Murphy explained, was very, very distraught. As you can imagine, somebody who has never, ever, ever been involved in a situation like this would be. That is a perfectly acceptable, understandable, and relatable human emotion. He had claimed at the time it was self-defense, as it has been shown multiple times throughout this court case. Yet, he was accused, incorrectly, initially, of a second-degree murder charge, which the state also then moved to a manslaughter charge, indicating yet they were not sure that this was anything other than self-defense. This goes back to a previous statement on premature judgment. The police prematurely judged my client. They had a body laying in a street. They had multiple people there, armed. They had an individual which they released, which was GSR positive, at the scene. Yet Mr. Haaris Ali was the target of their vision. They are unsure of who made the 911 call that day, which, in itself would be a little suspicious. However, any and all evidence that they have gathered and presented, be it via Senior Officer Murphy, is all secondhand account. Nobody was there at the time. We've shown that there was a lack of investigation into everyone that was there that day, including the scene, including, this additional witness. Yet it is very clear that Mr. Ali had his vehicle struck, was physically accosted, and as a result, in an attempt to scare off this individual, drew his weapon. Instead of withdrawing, this individual, Miss Victoria Emeralds, chose to take a swing at somebody she knowingly knew was armed. I don't know about you, but I'm not somebody who is trained in martial arts. I don't know how many punches I can take, but I think it's pretty reasonable to expect in state that if somebody is swinging at you violently and upsetly, you would defend yourself. Unfortunately, that day, somebody lost their life. But unfortunately, it has not been shown that there was any unlawful death that day. My client, Mr. Haaris Ali, young kid, no criminal record, did nothing other than defend himself against somebody physically attacking and accosting him. Thus, we ask this court to find my client, the defendant, Mr. Haaris Ali, innocent on all charges based on self-defense. There is no ground for manslaughter. There is no unlawful death. Thus the request. Your Honor, the defense rest.
Thank you, defense. All right. Myself and Judge York will now go into the chambers. We will come with the decision, and then I will come out and announce the verdict. Until then, the court will be in recess. Do your thing, Bailiff. Back in session, you got this.
Oh, yeah, hold on. Let me take my notes out. All rise. Honorable Judge White presided. Back in session. God bless.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, you may be seated on the defendant. So, myself and Judge York have done a lot of thinking about this matter. It was not an easy decision to come to. However, in the case of the state versus Haaris Ali, Mr. Ali, I find you in the for the charge of one count of manslaughter. I find you not guilty. This is for multiple reasons. It was, again, like I said, a difficult case, and there were many unknowns in this case. But with the knowledge I did have from the facts and the question, I could not determine beyond a reasonable doubt that there was manslaughter committed by yourself. My full summation will be up on the docket, but that will be up shortly on the docket. I'm also free to speak to attorneys if they have questions after this case. However, Mr. Ali, you are going to be given your bail back, and the charge is you are found not guilty of this charge. That is all for this matter. This matter is concluded, and court is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Your Honor.